Yo, YouTube, what's up with your boy? Sports and Fitness Rants. I'm back, guys. Hit that like button. Subscribe to my channel. What's up, y'all? Welcome back, guys. Welcome back, man. Got another great video for you guys today, as usual, man. You guys know the deal on this channel, man. It's all about setting the record straight, guys. Stopping the lies and stopping the narratives, man. Right? Holding these guys to a standard, man. And in this video, I want to talk to you guys about something that we're always touching on, about how there are really no great teams in the NBA anymore. And there really hasn't been a great team in the NBA for over the last 5 or 6 years now. Now, were the Boston Celtics a very good team last year? Yeah, but to me, they're not proven. They're not an all-time great team. So when I talk to you guys, and you guys hear me on the Sunday show, and me and Scap are going back and forth, I'm always talking about historical perspective, guys. I grew up in the 80s and the 90s watching this stuff. So I'm speaking historically. The perspective is there. A lot of these guys, they're not giving the perspective. They're only speaking based off of one era, right? From one perspective. But I'm giving you guys a perspective of a historical. And that's very important, man. So when I tell you guys, to me, the Boston Celtics aren't a great team. I'm talking about historically. Are they great for this era? Yeah, over the last couple of years, yeah, they've been a very good team, a great team. But that's not saying anything historically, because we've talked how weak the NBA is. If we're going to complain about how weak the NBA is, then how great are these teams? And we're going to talk about in this video, guys, and I'm going to give you guys a breakdown of why teams were much greater back in the day. We're going to break it down, guys. And I want to thank you guys, everyone across the world, everyone across the states has been supporting my channel, guys. Once again, I am truly, truly humbled by all the support, man. Shout out to everybody in the membership. Once again, guys, real recognize real, man. So thank you to all the true basketball fans out there, man. And you guys know what to do. Turn the volume all the way up. Hit that play button. Remember, these videos are for educational purposes. And let's roll. So, yes, guys, like I said, man, I wanted to break down, I wrote down a bunch of stuff here, but I wanted to break down to you guys what I'm always saying and really explain it to you guys what I mean when I tell you guys, to me, over the last 5 or 6 years, there has not been a great team. I'm talking about an all-time great team, a historically great team. I do not believe the 2020 Lakers were a historically great team. I do not believe the 2021 Milwaukee Bucks were historically great, or the 2022 Warriors, or the 2023 Nuggets, or the 2024 Celtics. I do not believe any one of these teams are historically great. I do not believe that. Were they great teams for the era? Were they good for the era that they played and they won the championship? Absolutely. But to me, when we talk about how weak the NBA's been over the last 5 or 6 years, then that has to go to the teams. It can't just be the individual players. Well, this guy is weak, or this guy is soft, or these guys are not true competitors. The NBA is weak. These guys don't play defense. Everyone's chucking threes. So if that's the case, then what does that do? That affects also the teams. So how great could the teams be in this era of NBA? When we talk about how weak this era of NBA is, so once again, guys, we have to keep the same standard all across the board. We can't just tear down LeBron James and the era that he plays in, because these guys are playing in the same damn era. So we must keep that same energy, guys. So when I talk to you guys about these teams are not great, to me, there haven't been no great all-time great teams. And we talk about that. Why? Because of the game, right? The way the game is being played. So how great could your teams be when you guys play this game that way? The officiating standard has been lowered. So how great are these guys? But the main thing, guys, the big thing about the NBA over the last 10, 15 years or so is how these guys are not competitors. So they don't want to play against each other. They want to play with each other. That's the big difference here for a lot of the superstar players of the past compared to the superstar guys over the last 10, 15 seasons. These guys have decided to team up with each other. They've decided to join forces instead of being true competitors. So you have Kawhi Leonard and Paul George go to the LA Clippers, right? You had a Chris Paul and a James Harden on the Houston Rockets. You had a LeBron James and Dwayne Wade on the Miami Heat with a Chris Bosh, right? You had a LeBron James and an Anthony Davis on the Lakers now, right? You had LeBron James and Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love on the Cleveland Cavaliers. You had Kevin Durant and Steph Curry and Klay Thompson on the Golden State Warriors, right? You've had these kinds of moves made. Now you have what? Joel Embiid and Paul George. You had Joel Embiid and James Harden. I mean, how many teams has James Harden been on? All of these guys, they're bouncing all over the place, man. Russell Westbrook has bounced around over the last 5 or 6 seasons, right? The premier players have been bouncing around, or they've been joining up with each other. So Steph Curry never left his team, but he allowed Kevin Durant to come there. So these are kinds of things that we're alluding to. And this is part of the problem why I tell you guys, there are no real great teams because teams don't stay together. When I talk to you guys about teams from the 80s and the 90s, guys, I'm talking about teams. It's not just a star player why these teams were great. It's because they had a team there that they kept together for years and years and years. You develop chemistry, a camaraderie. You develop a cohesion. Right? You understand and learn how to play together, which makes you more formidable, which makes you a greater team. It's not just about the individual stars on the team. It's the fact that these guys played together for years and years and years. They kept their cores together for years and years. I've talked about this many times. You probably heard me say this. Teams back in the day would keep their cores together longer. Back in the day. This is why teams became formidable teams. It's not like, oh, this team had this guy on it, that's why they were great. No, they had a great player on it. Maybe they had several great players, but they also had cohesion. They were great teams. So when I talk about historical great teams, this is what I'm alluding to. The 86 Celtics, right? The 89 Pistons, the 96 Bulls, right? The 88 Lakers, the 83 Sixers. These are all-time historically great teams, right? The 95 Rockets. These are great teams, man. And not only were the teams that won championships that were great, they were dynasties, some of them, but the teams that they had to beat to get there were also great. So for me, the 1993 Knicks would be the best team in the NBA right now. Right now, hands down, the 93 Knicks, best team in the league, guys. Why? Not because of Patrick Ewing or just because of him, but because of the other players that played together on the Knicks for years. You developed a core there. You had consistency, which made them a formidable team, not to mention the physical play and these guys on the defensive end. So we talk about some of these players. Think about the 96 Orlando Magic that the Chicago Bulls swept. They would be the best team in the NBA right now. Shaq and Penny Hardaway in this era of NBA, are you kidding me? They would be the greatest team right now in the league easily, hands down. And the Bulls swept that team. Swept them. The 98 Jazz, the 97-98 Jazz, they would be the best team in the league right now. The best team. So the teams who didn't even win were much more formidable because they were great teams. So I wrote down all this stuff, guys, just so a lot of these guys I can run through this off the top of my head, but I wanted to make sure I was historically accurate, once again, for the historical record, I tell you guys. So I wrote these things down to give you guys an idea so you can visualize what I'm talking about when I tell you teams kept their cores together longer. Let me break it down to you guys. And this is why these were great or very good teams. It wasn't just the individual stars that made them great. It was the cohesion. It was the core. All right, so let's think about this. The Portland Trail Blazers, which you've heard me talk about many times, went to 2 NBA Finals, 1990 and 1992, guys. A lot of people forget that. The Portland Trail Blazers had NBA Finals experience, right, when they went to the Finals in 1992. That wasn't their first year there. They actually were in the Finals in 1990. They beat the #1 seeded Lakers in 1990, guys. I believe the Lakers won. What did the Lakers win? 63 games? I think I wrote this down here somewhere. I could be wrong. But I think they won 63 games, guys. They won 63 games in 1990, guys. The year after Kareem Abdul-Jabbar retired. That's how good they were because they were a team. It wasn't Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Magic Johnson. They were a great team. All right? So the Portland Trail Blazers beat that team in 1990, guys. And then once again, they won the finals in 1991. They were a very formidable team. And I've told you guys what? The Portland Trail Blazers were a very deep team. So Michael Jordan may have been the best player in that series in 92. But the team, to me, top to bottom, the Blazers were a greater, better team, guys. And why were they a better team? Because they had guys that had been together for years and years and years. They developed over the years. So you had Clyde Drexler that was there, 1984 to 1994. But you also had Jerome Kersey that was there from 1985 to 1995. You had Kevin Duckworth that was there from 1988 to 1993. And you had Terry Porter there from 1986 to 1995, guys. So what does that show you? That highlights that the Portland Trail Blazers were a team. They kept these guys together for years. That was 4 guys that I read off, guys. Not to mention guys like Buck Williams that were there for several seasons. Guys like Danny Ainge that were there for several seasons, man, that were on that team. Drazen Petrovic. So the Trailblazers were a formidable team, guys, because they kept their core of Drexler, Kersey, Duckworth, and Porter. They kept those guys together for years, all right? Not for 2 or 3 years. These guys played, I think, a minimum of 6 seasons together, guys. That's called chemistry. That's called continuity. That's why they were a very great and formidable team, all right? When we think about the Utah Jazz, right? We talk about the Utah Jazz a lot, right? We think about Stockton and Malone. Obviously, you think about Stockton and Malone, one of the great duos in the history of the game, the legendary pick and roll. But it was the consistency of John Stockton and Karl Malone. These guys never missed games. They were never out of the lineup, right? So when I talk about some of these teams, that goes to your chemistry, right? Guys not load managing, guys not being injured or being out of the lineup all the damn time. These guys were there every single game. You knew they were going to be there. So that helps your team develop. You can build around John Stockton, Karl Malone, and that's what the Utah Jazz did. So you had guys like John Stockton came in 85 to 2003, right? 19 seasons with the Utah Jazz. Karl Malone, 1986, the very next season, Karl Malone, 1986 to 2003, right? 18 seasons. They played 18 seasons together. But then you added a guy like a Mark Eaton that was there from 1983 to 1993. So he played several seasons with John Stockton and Karl Malone. You had guys like Thurl Bailey that was there from 84 to 1991. So you built up a little bit of chemistry there, right? You had Darryl Griffith who was there from 1987 to 1991. 5 seasons with them. Dr. Duncanstein. You had guys like Jeff Malone come through the team. That was part of their core, right? And then we think about the Utah Jazz in the mid to late 90s when they bring in Jeff Hornacek, guys like a Byron Russell, right? You bring in a Greg Ostertag, right? You bring in some key role players around your 2 main stars, and over the years, they developed the chemistry, the camaraderie. Not to mention, you had Jerry Sloan there all of those years. Jerry Sloan was the assistant coach, I believe, from 86 to 89, and then he became the head coach in 1989, all the way to 2011. So that goes to your chemistry, your camaraderie, why your team became formidable. You're the same coach and the 2 great players for damn near 18 straight seasons, man. That's why the Jazz were hard to beat in the mid to late 90s, man. That's why the Lakers didn't want to play those guys, right? It wasn't about the talent or the names on the back of the jersey. It was about the teams, guys. Those are the facts. Those are Utah Jazz. I just mentioned the New York Knicks. Once again, it wasn't just Patrick Ewing, but you had Patrick Ewing there from 86 to 2000, right? 15 seasons. You had Joe Wilkins there from 86 to 92. So that was like 7 years he played with Patrick Ewing. You had Charles Oakley there from 89 to 98. All those years he played together with Patrick Ewing, with Gerald Wilkins. You had John Starks there from 1991 to 1998, all those years together. Anthony Mason from 92 to 96. Mark Jackson from 82 to 92. So you had all these guys play at least 5 seasons together, guys. 5 seasons. So you had Patrick Ewing there as the anchor, the best player in the team, right? One of the best players in the league. But you had a core around Patrick Ewing. And these guys stayed together for years. And you also had really great coaches around the early 90s into the mid-90s, into the late 90s when you had Pat Riley come in there. And then you had a Jeff Van Gundy. So you had the players there that stayed together and you were able to build up a formidable team. And that's why the New York Knicks in 1989, they were a very good team. They got beat by the Chicago Bulls in the second round. Then in 1991, they lost to the Bulls in the first round. Then in 1992, they pushed the Bulls to 7 games in the second round. And then in 1993, they faced the Chicago Bulls with home court advantage. They won more games than the Bulls in 1993. They had home court advantage in the Eastern Conference Finals. So the Knicks were obviously becoming a more and more formidable team based off of the idea that they kept their team, their core together. Patrick Ewing, Charles Oakley, John Starks, right? Anthony Mason. You kept these guys together and you built guys around that. That's why the Knicks were formidable. It wasn't just Patrick Ewing. If we think about the Indiana Pacers, same thing. The Indiana Pacers were a very formidable team in the mid to late 90s. They went to several Eastern Conference Finals, guys, and they went to an NBA Finals in, 2000, I believe. But the reason why the Indiana Pacers were a formidable team, were a consistent team, is not just because of Reggie Miller. So, yes, you had your star player on that team all those years, right? Reggie Miller played in the Indiana Pacers 1988, 2005, 18 seasons on Indiana, right? Then you had Vern Fleming from there from 85 to 95, right? 11 seasons with Reggie Miller. So he was the point guard, Vern Fleming, if you remember him. That called continuity. That's called consistency. You had Chuck Person on the Indiana Pacers from 1987 to 1992. So he played several seasons with Reggie Miller. You had Rick Smits there damn near every year with Reggie Miller from 1989 to 2000. So they played, 12 seasons together, him and Reggie Miller? They were the 2 constants on the Indiana Pacers. Rick Smits, who was a very good center, if he didn't have the foot problems, he would probably be a borderline Hall of Famer. Him and someone like a Brad Daugherty. They're borderline Hall of Famers. Injuries kind of derailed them and cut their careers a little short. But Rick Smits was there. You had Dale Davis there from 1992 to 2000. More chemistry. Detlef Schrempf was there from 1989 to 1993. You had Antonio Davis there, right? With Dale Davis, the Davis brothers, right? Or Davis boys, they called. They weren't brothers. But they were there for a long time. That develops the chemistry. So you could bring in Mark Jackson and a Chris Mullin in the late 90s to add to the team that was already there, right? That's why the Indiana Pacers were so formidable. Right, you had a great player like Reggie Miller, and you had some good players around him, and they built up a team, guys. Let's think about the San Antonio Spurs. Same thing for San Antonio Spurs. We automatically think David Robinson. I told you guys, you close your eyes, you think about a team, you think about one particular player. But it wasn't just David Robinson. Did the Spurs win anything before Tim Duncan got there? No, they didn't win a championship until 1999. But once again, the East, the NBA was very formidable. The Western Conference, there's a reason why the San Antonio Spurs didn't win an NBA Finals in that 90s era until Tim Duncan came along in 99. Because of the teams that David Robinson was battling against. Hakeem Olajuwon's Rockets, the Gary Payton Seattle Sonics, right? Charles Barkley's Suns, right? The Portland Trail Blazers, like I just mentioned, with Clyde Drexler. So many formidable teams, guys, right? That's part of the reason why the San Antonio Spurs never made the finals, really, until they got a little bit more help. But it wasn't just David Robinson. So you had David Robinson there from 1990 to 2003, right? 14 seasons in San Antonio, right? He was their anchor, their greatest player. Then you had Willie Anderson, who a lot of people forget. Willie Anderson, who was, like I said, a solid role player, a really solid defensive player, went out there, a nice jump shot. Willie Anderson, 1989 to 1995. So he played, what, 6 seasons with with David Robinson. But the mainstay for David Robinson, his right-hand man all those years, was Sean Elliott, who came in the same season as David Robinson, 1990 to 2001. They played like 11 seasons together, David Robinson and Sean Elliott. That was his right-hand man, right? That was like his Scottie Pippen, let's say. And Sean Elliott was a very good small forward. Didn't have the athleticism of a Scottie Pippen, but he was a better shooter than a Scottie Pippen. And like I said, he was just a very quality small forward, man. Just a really good jump shot, a reliable guy who was always there. Like I said, he was Dave Robinson's right-hand man. And you had a guy like Vinny Del Negro. You had 93 to 1998. He was there for 6 seasons with those guys. And then you had Avery Johnson, who was the point guard before Tony Parker came in to play for the San Antonio Spurs. You had Avery Johnson there from 1995 to 2001. So he was their point guard when they won, I believe, in 1999. So he played 7 seasons there. So that's a core. That's real. That's 6 guys. That's a core, guys. These guys stayed together for 6, 7, 8 years. Not 2 or 3 or 4 years. Years, guys, and you build up a team there. Let's think about the Seattle SuperSonics. Same thing. We all know about Gary Payton and Sean Kemp. Those are their star players. They were the leaders of the team, but they had a great team there. That's why they were formidable in 1996. And once again, the Seattle SuperSonics won 60 games in the 90s, like, I want to say 3 or 4 times, guys. They were a very formidable team. The San Antonio Spurs won 60 games. The Utah Jazz won 60 games several times in the 90s, guys. The Portland Trail Blazers won 60 games in the 90s. So these are very good teams, guys. But Seattle SuperSonics had Gary Payton, Sean Kemp from 1990 to 1997. 8 seasons he was there. And Gary Payton from 1991 to 2002. 13 seasons. So they played, 7 years together, Payton and Kemp, guys. That's called a team. That's called developing a team. But it wasn't just them. You had guys like Nate McMillan, who's a solid 2-way shooting guard, one of the top defenders at that position in the 90s. Nate McMillan was a very scrappy defensive player, could knock down the open shot, man. Just a very good player, man, Nate McMillan. But he was there from 87 to 98. And he was on that team with Gary Payton, with Sean Kemp. For all those years, man, they played together. You had a guy like Michael Cage on the Seattle SuperSonics. You guys probably don't remember him. Played from 89 to 94. I believe 6 seasons with those guys. Sam Perkins was on that team from 93 to 98. 6 seasons playing with Gary Payton, playing with Sean Kemp, playing with Nate McMillan, right? There's a team that's developing there. All right, a team. Remember, Sam Perkins came from the Los Angeles Lakers, and he was a key member of the 91 finals team. Remember, he hit the game winner in game 1. So Sam Perkins, and you had Detlef Schrempf there from 94 to 99, right? Several seasons, I believe, 5 or 6 years on that team. That's why Seattle was a very good team. That's why they were great. Because of all the guys that they had around their star players. It wasn't just Payton and Kemp. It was the other guys around them that were formidable, man, that played their roles. And they built that chemistry, and they were coached by George Karl. So you had a great coach there all those years. That's called consistency, man. Once again, these guys are not load managing. They're not sitting out games. They're not going down with phantom injuries. So they're in the lineup. That's how you build up a team, by guys being in the lineup. Let's think about the Atlanta Hawks. The Atlanta Hawks were a very good team in the late 80s into the early 90s. Why? Once again, the chemistry that they built up a team. Right, they were coached by Mike Fratello, which you guys know how I feel about Mike Fratello, the czar of the telestrator, a very quality coach in that 80s, early 90s, man. But he was the coach of the Atlanta Hawks. So, no, it wasn't just Dominique Wilkins. Right, remember, the Atlanta Hawks were I believe they were in the Eastern Conference Finals in 1986, I want to say, or 87. I can't remember. It was one of those years, man. They were in the Eastern Conference Finals, man. They had eliminated the Detroit Pistons, I believe, in the first round. I want to say it was 86, guys, that they were in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Celtics. They lost to the Celtics in the Conference Finals. The 86 Celtics. But they were a very formidable team. I believe they won 57 games that year. And it wasn't just Dominique Wilkins. So you had Dominique Wilkins there. We all know who was their star player from 83 to 93, right? 11, 12 seasons, I believe. He was on the Atlanta Hawks, right? As the anchor, the star player. But then you also had guys like Spud Webb. Spud Webb, he's not just a dunker, man. He was a very quality role player. He played from 86 to 91 with Dominique Wilkins. So they played, 7 seasons together, man? Spud Webb, Dominique Wilkins, man. I just posted those screenshots from the 86 first-round matchup against those Detroit Pistons, guys. Would Spud Webb have 19 points and 18 assists in that game? And Dominique Wilkins put up 50 in that game. So they were a formidable team, guys, those two guys. You also had Kevin Willis, though. I've talked about Kevin Willis on this channel. Kevin Willis, another guy, mainstay on the Atlanta Hawks. 85 to 94. All those seasons he played with those guys. That's why they were a very good team. And you had a guy like a Doc Rivers, who was their starting point guard. You bring Spud Webb off the bench, and you had him there from 1994 to 1999. And Doc Rivers was a very quality point guard, guys, at that time. A very solid defensive player at that point guard position, man. Just a quality point guard, man. So he was on there for, 6 seasons. So that shows you they were a good team, guys. That's why they were a good team. It wasn't because of Dominique Wilkins. It was the other guys around Dominique Wilkins that he had that they built up a team, right? That's a core of guys that I just read off. We think about the Los Angeles Lakers. I just talked about them before. You know, you hear a lot of people say, oh, the Lakers were old when the Bulls beat them in 1991. All they're trying to do is discredit Michael Jordan. We get all that. But the facts remain. I've told you guys what? In 1990, the Lakers won 63 games in 1990, guys, without Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And why did they win that many games? Because of the team they had there. It wasn't just Magic and Kareem. It was the other guys around them that made the Lakers a formidable and a great team, guys. So, we think about Magic Johnson. Obviously, he was there from 1980 to 1991. Okay? We think about Michael Cooper, who was there from 1979 to 1990. You think about A.C. Green, who was there from 1986 to 1993. A.C. Green, the Iron Man of the NBA's history. He's the true Iron Man, A.C. Green. This guy was a very good rebounder, man, and just a solid, tough, down low defender. Just a scrappy player, A.C. Green, man. He's one of those guys that you want on your team. He's a good role player, a glue guy. You had Byron Scott there, 84 to 1993. 11 seasons, guys. Byron Scott, a high-flyer shooting guard who played very good defense, man. He's one of the key role guys of the Lakers. And then obviously you had James Worthy there from 1983 to 1994. Big game James, right? The Finals MVP in 1988. That's James Worthy. He was on that team. I didn't even mention Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in that list. Not even mention Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. But what you see there is the chemistry, right? I could have mentioned someone like a Vlade Divac, right, who came to the Lakers, I believe, in 1990, I want to say. And he was there for some years, Vlade Divac. That's how you build up a team chemistry. And that's why in 1991, after Kareem retired, or excuse me, in 1990, after Kareem retired, they were still able to win 63 games, guys, because they were a formidable team. That's why in 1991, after Michael Cooper retired, the Lakers were in the NBA Finals. And they beat the #1 seeded Portland Trail Blazers in the Western Conference Finals because they were a very good team. It wasn't just Magic Johnson. It was Vlade Divac and Byron Scott and James Worthy and A.C. Green. It was a bunch of guys out there, man. So those are the facts, guys. Listen with the Boston Celtics. Same thing. We all think about Larry Bird, Kevin McHale. We know the names of these guys. But it wasn't just because those guys were great players. It's because they were together for years. So Larry Bird goes in 80 to 1992, right? And we know his career was cut short because of the injuries. But you had McHale there the very next season, 81 to 93. All those years they played together, 12 seasons together. Then you have Robert Parrish from 81 to 94. So you had all three of those guys, a lot of people call the greatest front line in NBA's history. Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, and Robert Parrish. They were together for 11 seasons, guys. 11 seasons. That's called consistency, man. That's how you build a team. But it wasn't just them. You had Kevin Gamble there from 88 to 94, a very solid small forward, I believe he played. But you had Ed Pinckney there from 84 to 94. But you had Reggie Lewis there, guys. Reggie Lewis was going to be the next superstar of the Celtics. We all know about Len Bias. He didn't make it. But Reggie Lewis was in the NBA. He played in the NBA. And he showed flashes of greatness. Still the only guy that I saw block Michael Jordan in a game like 3 times in one game. This Reggie Lewis, man. 6'7", had the long arms. He was a true competitor, Reggie Lewis, man. Played from 88 to 93, man. And we all know he passed away with a heart condition in the preseason of the next season. But that's why the Celtics were a very great team, because of all the guys they had together that were there for years and years and years. That's called being a great team, guys. A team. Let's think about the Detroit Pistons. Same thing with the Detroit Pistons. It wasn't just Isaiah Thomas, even though Isaiah Thomas likes to talk about how great he was. Oh, I beat Michael Jordan. I beat Larry Bird. I beat Magic Johnson. No, you didn't. You had a great team around you, man. A team that was there for years and years and years. I've done a video on this. So, you had Isaiah Thomas, 1982-1994, 13 seasons in Detroit, guys. But it wasn't just him. You had Bill Laimbeer there remember, they made a trade for Bill Laimbeer in 1982 to come play with Isaiah Thomas. There comes Bill Laimbeer, 1982-1994, guys. So all those years, 13 seasons together, guys. Then we think about Dennis Rodman, 1987 to 1993. That's 7 seasons together, guys. But Dennis Rodman, one of the greatest defenders, if not the greatest defender, the most versatile defender in the history of the NBA, guys. But Isaiah Thomas talks about he was just beating them guys by himself. Right? How about Vinny the Microwave Johnson, 1982? So the same season that Isaiah Thomas was drafted to the Detroit Pistons, they traded for Bill Laimbeer and Vinny the Microwave Johnson, who played from 82 to 91. All those years together, guys. Joe Dumars, one of the greatest defensive shooting guards in the history of the game. The guy who Michael Jordan said guarded him better than anybody else. That's who was guarding Michael Jordan, along with Dennis Rodman. And we all know about the Detroit Pistons and the Jordan rules. But once again, guys, you had Dennis Rodman on that team. Joe Dumars from 86 to 95, man. That's a lot of years together they were on that team. And then you had John Sally, 87 to 1992. 6 seasons, I believe. So once again, you built a big team. That's what, 7 guys I just ran off. That's their core, guys. And Mark Aguirre, 89 to 93. 5 seasons. So you had Isaiah Thomas, Mark Aguirre, Bill Laimbeer, Dennis Rodman, Vinny the Microwave Johnson, Joe Dumars, John Sally. All of those guys were on the team for at least 6 seasons together, man. That's insane. That's a great team. That's why they only lost 2 games in 89. Let's deal with the Cleveland Cavaliers, guys, who was coached by the great Lenny Wilkens, who was, to me, a forgotten legend, the player. The guy's inducted into Hall of Fame as a player and a coach, Lenny Wilkens. A lot of people don't realize that. Lenny Wilkens, I believe, was the last player coach in the NBA's history. He was a player and coach, guys. That's right. Go check it out. But Lenny Wilkens coached the Cleveland Cavaliers in the late 80s into the early 90s. When Michael Jordan hit that shot in 89, Lenny Wilkens was coaching that team. He was one of the great coaches in NBA's history, guys, of that era. Coached the Cleveland Cavaliers. And this is why I would tell you guys, the Cleveland Cavaliers were a formidable team. Not only did you have a great coach, but you also had great players, but a team, guys. You had guys there for years. So we all know you had Mark Price there from 1987 to 1995. 9 seasons, guys, he was there. But you had Brad Daugherty from same thing, 87 to 94. So they played 8 seasons together. I told you guys, Brad Daugherty's career got derailed because of, I believe it was a back injury that messed him up. But Brad Daugherty's an easy Hall of Famer, guys, if he played another 5 more seasons. He was derailed for the injuries, but that's how good he was. So you had Mark Price, Brad Daugherty there, but you had guys like Craig Elo, 1988 to 1993, guys. Craig Elo, the two guard that was guarding Michael Jordan during the shot. This guy was a scrappy player, man, a gritty player. Craig Elo, I always respected Craig Elo, man, and how he brought it to Michael Jordan, always giving the effort. He wasn't just some white guy. He was part of the Cleveland Cavaliers. He was part of their core, man. So Craig Elo. But you also had Larry Nance there, 1988 to 1994. They brought in Larry Nance with the trade from the Phoenix Suns. Larry Nance, one of the great shot-blocking power forwards, if not the greatest shot-blocking power forward in the history of the game, guys. This guy challenged everything. Even if he didn't block your shot, he was going to challenge it. He would give you 18 to 20 points a game. Like I said, about 8 or 9 rebounds. He was a solid rebounder. Not a great rebounder position, but a solid rebounder. Like I said, just a hellified defender, man. Just a great shot blocker, man. Didn't really turn the ball over like that. It was a decent playmaker. Just a really good player, man. Larry Nance, guys. A borderline Hall of Famer, Larry Nance. He was on that team. And you had a guy like a Hot Rod Williams on that team who played from 1987 to 1995. So all of these guys played 7, 8, 9 seasons together, guys. That's why the Cavaliers in 89 had 57 wins, and they were supposed to be the next team up after the Pistons. I keep telling you guys this because of the players they had on the team. They were so stacked that they traded Kevin Johnson, guys. They had Mark Price and Kevin Johnson on the Cleveland Cavaliers. They traded Kevin Johnson away because they had Mark Price. That's how stacked they were with talent, guys. Remember, they got rid of Ron Harper. They had Ron Harper on that team, too, and they got rid of Ron Harper. That's how stacked that team was. So in 1991, right, the Cleveland Cavaliers, I believe they got knocked out in the second round. But then in 1992, you remember, they were in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Chicago Bulls. They were a very good team, guys. Very formidable. And they were that way because of the team, the chemistry that they built up over the years. Right, guys in a load match. They didn't miss a lot of games. So you're able to build the chemistry up. Right, think about it. How can teams today build a chemistry up, build that cohesion when guys are always out of the lineup? They're in and out of the lineup. How do you build up chemistry when your team is in and out of the lineup or coaches are being fired every 2-3 years? or the star players being traded every 3 seasons, or your entire roster is being revamped every 3 years. There is no teams. You don't build any chemistry. It's insane to me, man. And that's why, as you guys can see, there were so many formidable teams in the 80s and the 90s, because these guys, the teams were built up over years. So yes, you had great players, but you also had really good role players around those players. And the great players were able to maximize these guys, able to get more out of them. They made the players around them better. So when you're playing 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 seasons together, guys, right? You think about Chicago Bulls. It wasn't just Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan, but you had Horace Grant there for years. You had B.J. Armstrong there for years. You had John Paxson there for years. You had Bill Cartwright there for years. That's called chemistry. You build up a team. Those are the facts, guys. Today, they don't build it up as much because guys are always getting traded. There's always a free agent. Guys are requesting trades. They're leaving to go here. The coaches are getting fired every 2 or 3 seasons. The star players leaving. So how do you build up a chemistry? How do you build up a great team? You don't. And that's why there are no great teams in the NBA. The Celtics are a very good team, guys. They've been probably the best team over the last several years. And why is that, though? Because not just the players that they have are very good, but these are guys that they drafted. They've been together for years. Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, they've been together for years. Right? Al Horford's been on that team for years. I mean, my goodness, man. That's why they built up a team that way. You guys know, these are the facts, man. I know this video went super long, but this is part of the reason why the NBA is struggling. You can't really latch on to a player or a team because these guys are always moving around and the coach is always getting fired. These are the facts, guys. You guys know the deal, man. I'll catch you guys on the next one.